back with another episode of A Builder 4 AM. And this time I have here co-hosting with me Felipe. And for our guest, we have Nick from Fuel Labs. Hi, Nick. How are you, man?
Hey, doing good. How are you guys?
Doing great.
Hello.
So, Nick, just for a brief introduction, it would be really nice for our guests to get a little bit of who are you, your backstory, how you came to found Fuel.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started, maybe just for some backstory, I started in the space quite a long time ago, initially in like around 2013, doing a lot of mining and things like that. So it's like mining, altcoins, trading into Bitcoin, that sort of thing. Then after that, wanted to actually build something. So found Ethereum in the very, very early days. So started to work with it. I'm probably one of the first actual people to build with Ethereum. I think there was maybe like a few other projects before me, but I think on the Ethereum website there was 10 projects. I think I had 2 of them at one point, which was a big deal, and then I'd say I've been building with Ethereum for a long time. I started initially with apps, then moved into some infrastructure and SDKs and things like that. I was working with Consensus for quite a while, so I worked with them for 4 years and left Consensus, and then wanted to effectively solve some of these bigger issues that I saw with working with Ethereum specifically that kind of plague it from every angle. So a very limited machine, a very limited system on the scalability side, something that was very hard to scale well, and found rollups, found the rollup technique. We built the first rollup on Ethereum with Fuel. I was like Fuel V1, and then after that, we moved to actually try to comprehensively solve a lot of the issues. Fuel V1 was very much like a test run, you could say, for rollups and doing a different kind of architecture to the EVM. And the whole idea was that sort of the limitations of the EVM have gotten us into this scalability rollup issue in the first place. And, designing with it again, or just repeating it again and again and again, doesn't really holistically solve the problem, or doesn't open up as many doors. So trying to build a new architecture that really does holistically solve some of these issues is like a way better approach, you could say. And I would hope that, at least with humans and blockchains, that if we've done anything, it's hopefully get us off of the addiction to the EVM. I think it served us well. I think there's a lot of really great things about it, but at the same time, it's very much a first pass at doing blockchain virtual machines, and there's so much more that can be done now. So and with Fuel, maybe to give some background there, so gone through many ways to position Fuel, but I think I'm just going to say now, because it just, you got to smooth brain it. Just say Fuel is the fastest blockchain, period. So just say that. Technically, and on a lot of different levels, we can accomplish really insane benchmarks, mainly just because we have re-architected a lot of different things, and the way that the transaction model works, the virtual machine, other aspects of the system, allows us to pump out a lot more throughput, sort of pound for pound for a machine, just because it's doing things very differently. And Fuel and the architecture comes with a different language, a different stack. We have a layer 2 deployed to Ethereum called Ignition, and we also have a sequencer, technically a layer 1. That the aim or the target there is to help decentralize some of the building and in these aspects of the system, as well probably secure other aspects like some of the bridging and some other unique design features. So that's some background on Fuel, and really happy to talk with a project I like a lot, Cartesi. So really stoked to be here.
Sorry so my job here is to interrupt Ron once in a while. I find it very funny that the way you were describing how Fuel was born is kind of similar to the same problems that we were trying to solve with Cartesi, up to the almost the very last sentence when you were saying like, yeah, we figured out that just copying EVM and having everything EVM is not gonna solve the problem. So we decided to build something new, and that's where our paths in the road, they kind of fork, because you decided to build something new, we decided to port something old. But my question is actually not in this direction. So when you describe Fuel as the fastest blockchain, are you not worried that that will lead people to think that Fuel is a layer one and has no connection to Ethereum? How do you like explain that to people?
Yeah, so I mean, look, I think to be very direct, like I don't think Ethereum is helping us very much at this point. I think like Ethereum is great. I love working with Ethereum, and I really like Vitalik, and you know, I've always really liked Ethereum and the whole project. That being said, I don't think projects that have stepped really far out of the EVM have really gotten much love, or you know, like it's been very difficult to evangelize them within Ethereum because they're so tied to the architectures they have. So as far as like Fuel is concerned right now, I mean, I'd like to see our sequencer and our layer one actually help validate the chain and help validate ignition, additionally to doing the sequencer stuff as well. And I've talked about this a little bit, kind of like a hybrid, mainly because we don't have the fault proofs in right now. So it would be actually better if we had more validation, even some staking. Like that would be a step up probably from just like a single validator or just like a few validators. And then I would also say that like I think we need to move beyond all this stuff. I don't think it really matters right now. I think what matters a lot more is like you know what product you're building or what group you're targeting. So if you're targeting like large institutional money, maybe they care about the security and the underlying stuff so much that they want this particular property. But not even Arbitrum meets that property right now. I mean, quite frankly, technically, there's still a little, you know, backdoors and other things to this whole system. And the whole reason you wanted rollups in the first place was because you wanted to inherit the security of Ethereum. And you either do that or it's a multi-sig. And there's no in between. It's either that or it's a multi-sig, basically. And it's either done through ZK or fully no multi-sig, no upgrade keys, like rollups like Fuel V1, or it's a multi-sig. And now multi-sigs are not that bad if they're like, if they have enough of a committee, like enough of a system for now. Obviously, I think to fulfill what rollups should be in the future, you want them to be kind of these like extensions to the system, or Validiums and other things to be extensions to the system. But I'd just say like a lot of this stuff doesn't really matter right now. I think what matters a lot more is building products that people want to use, and also trying to push the space into new directions that we haven't been able to venture into yet because we've been pretty limited in the design space. I think these things are much more important than just like, are you Ethereum aligned or not? You know, like I just listened to a bunch of communist music because it's quite great. I'm pretty Ethereum aligned, you know, just on the playlist. But I don't need to, you know, I don't need to necessarily thwart that onto the users. I think they don't really care. So I would just say like Fuel even and Ignition will likely turn into some kind of Optiminium or hybrid, hopefully and eventually a Validium, just because I think we need to show much more expansive throughput, like in the several 100,000 TPS range, just to differentiate. And I feel like that's where we can add the most value. And right now I'm just seeing that like people just want interesting new primitives, new products, new ways to get yield. Obviously you want to make it safe, you want to make it secure, or as secure as you can. And if Ethereum actually scales its throughput and its DA up enough, then we'll use it. But for now, I think like some of these other solutions like Avail or Eigenlayer or whatever are probably okay. It's just like, I was really hoping to really purely use Ethereum for everything, but it highly constrains what we can do on the throughput side because of the DA system. And also, I don't think Ethereum security is as prized right now for rollups as it once was. So I think these things are kind of, you know, on the conversation. Yeah.
No, this is awesome. Actually, this throws us back a little bit to a tweet that you made this week talking about like priorities in the project.
Yeah.
Were there any specific decisions or something specific recently that made you want to do this pivot or at least change of mind? And what were the trade-offs even in terms of planning ahead and things that you're doing, things that you're building to decide how we're going to start tackling the market, the people, the clients, the users, the developers right now?
Yeah. I would say that, many things. I mean, and for people's context too, I made kind of like a pretty big like mega thread of all the things that we're doing with Fuel right now, and just like a lot of the things we're thinking about. And yeah, I think in terms of the decision making, what I would say is I got into building architecture and Fuel because I wanted to build a wallet on Ethereum that didn't suck, and that was the very beginning starting point. And that's very much a product, like a consumer product. And what I realized is like all the infrastructure is basically working against you in order to make a consumer product. So you have to fix the infrastructure in order to make the product. And I think now, in some kind of large way, circling back to that philosophy, I think Fuel is very much going to circle back to building product, and then having the infrastructure be a supportive piece to those products. And I think that it's probably a better way to build infrastructure and it's probably something we should have done earlier, only in the sense that when you're really forced to build the product, then you start realizing where you're weak, where you're strong, like where things actually will add value to the to the user. And I feel like we sort of tried with Fuel doing a more ecosystem wide sort of generalist play at a lot of things. I don't think people care or want that anymore. I think what they want is like, give me one or two really good or interesting or new products or different ways that we could do existing products that's better, and then focus on that really, really heavily. And so the infrastructure decisions will now be made based around the product, not based around, just some nebulous alignment things or issues or whatever. And I think that you should look at that more or less. And I think even some products right now, like Hyperliquid, kind of are a great example of building the product and then having the infrastructure be a supportive piece to that versus doing it the other way around. And I think that it's much more interesting for Fuel, a project like Fuel, to do that, because that's the kind of way that you go and inspire new devs and new people to actually want to build with you, is because there's something good there to showcase, because a problem that we have is like, I can tell you Sway is great. I can tell you the Fuel VM is amazing. I can give you benchmarks and stats, but like, you're a dev, you're busy. AI is taking over your life. EVM chains are everywhere, and probably the business people around you are just telling you to do EVM stuff. So basically, like, that's a pretty shit environment to try something different, right? Whereas if you have a few product cases where even the devs can go and bring that product or that showcase to somebody and say like, holy shit, this is great, then even the business people are starting to ask, well, wait a second, what are they doing differently, right? And I think even in Cartesi's case, or using different architectures or virtual machines or other things, I think you very much have to probably do a similar thing if you really want to actually get people interested, right? So yeah, that's sort of the idea.
We do have an initiative here in Cartesi, which is really nice and kind of works together with what you said, that it's our experiment weeks, right? Mm-hmm. Where everyone puts pens down and we start building on our own tech to understand first things first, its flaws, its advantages, what you can do. Then you create a showcase of so many things. It's basically an internal hackathon, and it's always really fun, and so many crazy things come out of it.
No, that's awesome. And I think you definitely need that for sure. I kind of feel like too, though, even having bigger initiatives, like bigger product showcases or things that the team works on, I think is going to become a lot more important in crypto, just to kind of leverage and showcase what you have, And I feel like the further you step away from the user as an architecture or an infra project, I think the worse or the less useful the results, basically.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So I wanted just to take a little bit of a step back
Mhm.
because the podcast is called Brain to Board, where we show a little bit of the architecture and talk a little bit about the architecture. So just for people to have some understanding of Fuel, can you
Mhm.
show us a little bit of the architecture with a drawing, with a schema, data flow, or anything that you have in there?
Yeah, for sure. It's probably even useful to kind of showcase. I mean, some of our docs have some really great stuff, which I can share. But basically, here, let me go to a few different things here. So, and I would also, if you're interested in Fuel, I would definitely recommend checking out our docs because we did a lot of work on like on quite a few of these things. So let me just go through. I think probably the easiest way is to just go through the docs because they have some really great stuff that showcases some of the architecture. So
I love that we as non-EVM projects we have to put a lot of care into our docs, right?
oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
No, it is kind of crazy. Yeah, so in our docs we have like the Fuel book, so it gives you kind of like a why Fuel, but there's also an architecture section, and so with Fuel, maybe some high level. We have our own virtual machine designed from scratch, our own transaction model designed from scratch, block model, bridging architecture, security architecture, and language, and tool chain. So everything's designed from scratch to kind of give a whole different experience, a whole different way to build everything. And basically, kind of going into the Fuel VM, the first notable things is that the transaction architecture, and also to the extent the VM2, is based around a UTXO model and parallelization. And so because it's built off of this model, this is where we get a lot of the throughput advantages, because the UTXO model is quite atomic, it's easy to parallelize, and the VM kind of follows up this and has a sort of an understanding of this. And this is where we get kind of a lot of the throughput or a lot of the efficiency gains. So when we talk about the accounts model versus the UTXO model, if you have an accounts model, what ends up happening is and this is sort of what you typically see, you get a lot of bottlenecking in processing. So a lot of things have to go to the same place, and you have to wait one after the other in order for the changes to be made. And then that ends up creating these sort of hotspots in processing, and that slows everything down. With a UTXO model, everything's broken up into these kind of atomic packages, you could say. So you can really very heavily parallelize everything, and that gives you some enormous advantages. And so the first fundamental thing for Fuel to understand is it's not an accounts model, it's a UTXO model. Now, for devs or for Ethereum devs or other people, you can still go and build tokens and other things very similarly to the accounts model if you want. But there's kind of a whole different philosophy to embrace, where it's you want the dev to be able to build these highly parallelizable apps, these highly highly efficient kinds of designs, because this is how you really push the throughput forward, right? And as well, unlike the EVM architectures, we don't have a global state root. So you don't need to reserialize the state every time you make changes to an account. It just is processed in a very sort of light way. So when you have the architecture done this way, it gives you kind of maximal amount of sort of parallelizable potential. But in addition to that, there's a lot of different things we've done in the architecture. So we have a register-based architecture instead of stack, as well. Some helpful registers here. We have our own instruction set. Our memory model is designed to basically help alleviate cross contract call copying. So we have a lot of availability basically to actually when you call contracts, instead of having to copy everything over again, you don't necessarily need to do that with the Fuel VM memory model. And then we have some interesting new primitives, and that's along the lines of predicates, scripts, and contracts. So predicates allow us, they're probably the most interesting primitive. Scripts and contracts you've seen before with things like the move architecture and some of this other stuff. So they're pretty, kind of vanilla, you would say, on the architecture side. Scripts just allow you to kind of, in a single transaction, say you want to like call a bunch of contracts and do some logic at the same time. They're kind of like a runtime outside of contracts to be able to operate and do that. Predicates, however, are very much the more interesting topic, and those are tied again to the UTXO architecture. And the most interesting thing about predicates is that they're kind of like conditions or mini programs that you can attach to a UTXO, which is kind of like a bundle of coins. And in doing so, you can create new kinds of sort of architectures or programs that, again, are highly efficient and in a way that you can parallel process and do so in a very sort of massively scalable way. So, for example, you could have a UTXO with some coins, and you can make a predicate that says anyone can spend these coins and take them for themselves if they send this amount of coin to this person. And what's cool about that is that's like your classic OTC trade, right? And what's neat about that particular program is you don't necessarily need to have a signature anywhere in that program in order to fulfill those cases. You can bring your coins and maybe your OTC trade. And this allows you to fulfill the condition, but you can do so at scale and do so in a way that you basically might not need even signatures. And that's where you can get crazy throughput. If you can eliminate signatures from certain conditions or certain transactions, then you can get this kind of like enormous throughput. And lastly, with the UTXO model, it also allows for really interesting transaction architecture. So in our transaction model, our transaction architecture, I think there should be some diagrams here. There's a few different kinds of transaction types, but the more interesting side of the architecture, I'll see if there's a diagram here. Let's see. Maybe there's not a very good one yet. There might not be a good diagram here. The more interesting thing about our transaction model is that you have inputs, outputs, scripts, conditions, and it can be multi-party. It can be multi-input type. You can have smart contracts in there. You can not have smart contracts in there. That allows you to build crazy amounts of stuff just even at the transaction level alone before you even get to the virtual machine or before you even get to the VM. And so this as well is where we can get a lot of throughput because we can bundle things like UTXOs with a lot of trades. You can bundle them into a single transaction, and that gives you this like bundling effect too. And that reduces the amount of cryptographic overhead and kind of gets you again to this really flexible, highly scalable system. So anyway, I'll stop there, but those are some of the innovations that Fuel has. Yeah.
No, this is awesome, man. I love that you were able to show this, and I love what Felipe mentioned about we have to be very thorough, and it gets kind of complex to explain things once we have to introduce so many concepts on top of it, right?
Yes.
I myself know that when I'm writing my docs, every time I'm writing Cartesi docs and I'm trying to replan how we're going to do it, and I see a whole page just explaining what rollups are so we can have the foundation to explain what something else is. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it gets the feeling of being convoluted. Sometimes it gets the feeling of being very necessary. So there's always that huge discussion, like, do users even know what a rollup is? Or if everyone knows what a rollup is, I don't have to explain it. But of course, there are some devs that don't know. So there is this whole discussion, even on how to onboard people, how to onboard devs, right? You mentioned being the fastest blockchain is a way to simply introduce yourself because there are devs that want that. But there are devs that want something more. How do you tackle those, right? Yeah. I think this is a huge pain point and discussion whenever writing those.
Yeah, and I think that you could talk about it through a few different lenses. Like you could talk about it through pain points. Like, the EVM, you can kind of get everything done, but it never feels like the app is going to scale, Like it just always feels very bulky or very baggy, you could say. Similarly, when you design transactions on Ethereum, there's no flexibility. Like the transaction's like a few fields and that's it. Now that is great because it's simple. So you have like single entry points and it's just ETH and it's like a very simple transaction model. It's either a call or a contract. However, super limiting on the user experience side, like the expressivity of what you could do from the user experience point of view. Like, what if I want to, be this multi-sig that calls multiple contracts at the same time in the same transaction, like do that all at once in a very unique or like weird way? I can't do that now, because I have to like go through these different channels and these different things. And so that highly restricts what you can do, basically. So all these different things end up being super restrictive, and really, really annoying, because you can't really innovate over them. And that's why, like, even if you speed the EVM up, it still doesn't really help, because it's basically just like now a faster version of the shittier system we had before. And it's just like, okay, well, this is a little better, but it still seems like everything's the same. And then if you tried to build something at scale, it would get all mucked up from all of the EVM garble anyway, that you shouldn't really be paying for, needing to process anyway. So on your point, like, you could talk about it from dev problems, right? Or you could also talk about it from user problems, as kind of like motivations. But I do think that at the end of the day, like, you have to put your money where your mouth is. And you have to have some like showcase maybe to kind of show that like this is the world you want to build, and I think that that's very much important for people to experience, because it's one thing to talk about it and it's another thing to like execute over it. Yeah,
expressivity is definitely something that we talk a lot in Cartesi. It's one of the main problems that we're trying to solve.
Yep.
I found it funny, Ron, just on your point about explaining roll-ups and so on to developers. When we first started with Cartesi, since we are basically bridging Web 2 tooling to Web 3, our first strategy was, obviously, and people still suggest to us to this day, so I go, okay, let's onboard the Web 2 devs, right? Let's bring everyone on Web 2 to create blockchain applications. And then we quickly found that was a rabbit hole, because you had to basically explain. You sit down with someone from Web 2, like, okay, do you know about Bitcoin? And then you start to explain blockchain, and then start to explain the EVM.
It's
Wait,
impossible.
but the EVM is not not
really
scalable.
bad.
And then you talk to it's a sales cycle of basically a few years, right?
No, I mean, and that's like an impossible ask, I mean, I think that even if I were to pitch Cartesi as an outsider, all I would say is it just verified Linux, it's like bonded Linux or something like that, right? Because you just don't want to get into all this other stuff. Like, no one cares about all this other stuff. I think that like you would just want to avoid it altogether. Hence why, even for me, it's just like, if I just say it's the fastest blockchain, like, it's not necessarily right now the fastest blockchain, but I think I have a very viable pathway over everyone else to actually say it could be, with benchmarks and receipts. So I'll just say that. And like, maybe that works. But I agree with you. It's like impossible to sometimes explain these architectures. Yeah.
But to your point, if we just showed up with like, look at this very cool dApp, right? Even to Web 2 people, look at this, like, it's super cool. And then you explain the features on it, right? So like, this is fully permissionless, this is decentralized, no one can stop it, and so on. Then that would work much better than trying to explain the entire thought process of that, how that application was created.
100%.
So it's also a much better selling tool than the infrastructure features.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'd even I was pitching this like big open world game founder the other day that I got an intro to. And my pitch to him was just that most people are bullshitting and they're just giving you some EVM clone again. Maybe it's faster, but they just want you to use their chain. And then secondly, and this is like the more sort of interesting thing, is that I would want to build a system with fuel in your game of which no user ever hears the word crypto or blockchain whatsoever. In fact, it would be discouraged to even do it. It is just simply the system used inside of the game and to manage assets and other things, simply because like it does not matter. Gamers do not need to know these things. And in fact, the only reason why you would want to use a blockchain inside of a game like that is because if the game ends up collapsing, which games often do, maybe there's a community life after. And in that community life, you'd want the asset ownership and other things protected. because those assets are their assets, and you do want a real economy, and blockchains can actually offer that. But like outside of that, I don't want anyone ever to even hear about a blockchain. You know, I would actively discourage it, because I think it would harm the product of the game, and it would be great for Fuel. We'll pitch it to our audience, you know, and say like, look at how awesome this is. But the gamers should not know, you know, and I think that would be the right way to do it, basically. Yeah.
This is very interesting. I find myself talking with Max a lot. Max is the CEO of Rives, which is a great product that was built with Cortese as a gaming platform and a on-chain console, actually, where you can create cartridges, sell them. And oftentimes he says things like, the ultimate game is building your own game. So it's more about the experience and the journey of the game itself and the community it creates than the fact that it's on blockchain itself. I think at least that's what I get sometimes from his vision, which is very nice.
You want to like get rid of the blockchain, you know, and even like we have this one game. It's probably one of the better experiences on Fuel, basically, called Sway Farm. And what's great about this is like, and you'll notice here, you know, you can harvest tomatoes and go and sell them or whatever. But aside from some of the rendering, you can just play it. And so this uses like application specific sequencing for us. It uses a system of bonding. The app works out the fees with some Sybil, and then the wallet is a burner wallet. And so this gives you like a much better experience, where the gamer doesn't even know it's crypto, you know? And I think you want the unfortunate thing about that game is like, that's probably one of our best showcases, and it's like Fuel, you know, fastest blockchain ever. And it's like, we've got Sway Farm. It's like Sway Farm's the best example right now, but we'll hope to change that. But you know,
I have a theory that these farming games can totally destroy humanity, because they're like so addictive and fun to play. So yeah,
there's something about
what you're doing.
there's something deeply psychological about farming, that if you just put a farm in front of any human being, they just start sort of knowing what to do, you know? Like they just start being like, well, I got to start farming the crops. Like literally and we're even thinking of building some other mini games where we maybe do like some mining or something, but it's probably still not as good as farming. I still think farming might still be the best. Like I think mining ore and stuff is cool, but I don't like, humans get that, but it's not as spiritual as farming, I would say. I think like Sway Farm taps into like a spiritual level, you know? Yeah,
I mean,
I'll send you the link.
You're plugging farming and mining and putting all together. Very soon you're gonna have Age of Empires there.
Yeah.
So
Age of Empires is all I wanted in the first place. Decentralized Age of Empires. If we could achieve that, I would be so happy. I think it's just like, I think the multiplayer aspects of that would be difficult, because I think with blockchain games, you want something where there's an economy and then something you can come back to and not feel stressed out about, because I think that's the problem with like an Age of Empires game. It's like, you know, you don't want to like wake up one day and like, just because you were asleep, like someone just like totally like destroyed your settlement, right? So you know, that's the only problem I see. But outside of that, I would love it. Yeah.
No, it's great. I remember the addiction that was Farmville, at least in Brazil. It was a phenomenon. No one would ever stop playing that.
I know, it's crazy, and I think like you kind of have these like gaming's so hard. That's the thing. Like, and even these games that we would create too internally would be largely showcased. Like I wouldn't literally bet the farm, so to speak, on gaming, just because it's like, man, it's fucking brutal. Like, you know, I see so many games, similar types of games and also other types of games where I'm just like, they look okay, like they look fine, they look interesting, but it's just for whatever reason they didn't take off. And the devs spend, I don't know, so much of their life like just, you know, blood, sweat, and tears over their game, and it's just like still nothing, you know. So a really rough industry. If we think blockchain's bad, gaming's probably still worse, I think. Yeah.
Do you think there's a strategy there in terms of showcasing? Like, let's build this specific type of app because this is gonna showcase the specific feature of our tech, or it's more open-ended? Like, let's just build whatever we want,
Yeah.
and the tech will make sense for it or not.
I think that you do have to have some angle probably that you were thinking, something that gets people maybe excited about like that particular thing or that particular feature. Like what's nice about Sway Farm is that's showcasing like, you know, there's like a burner wallet angle. There's also a gas fee angle. You can just play the game on blockchain. That's on mainnet too. So like these kinds of things are interesting. I think that like if you just build anything, like maybe it's not as strong of a case or as strong as like something that could gain momentum. And I feel like that's actually a little trickier. You probably want to showcase more specific, like interesting angles, only in the sense that like, you know, I think this is where even if you're marketing something, eventually it's got to meet the road somewhere. Like eventually it's got to meet some of your marketing at some point. But that being said, if you could build something really cool that's sticky or that has some interesting angle to it, like who cares? Like it's great. I'm sure it'll help or market itself in a way. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. We do have a session here, a block which is called the rapid fire round that I want to try with you.
Sure.
I just propose questions and you barely think of the answer and you give me just straight up what's in your mind, short answers, one word, one sentence. Okay. Let's do it.
Cool.
All right, rapid fire time. So one word to describe Fuel.
Fast.
Biggest misconception about rollups?
That they actually improve anything right now for our product. Yeah.
That's a strong one. What's one Web3 product you wish existed but doesn't?
A wallet that's actually good.
If you had to bet on one major Web3 trend for the next 5 years, what would be?
That humanity's last hope is probably crypto outside of AI taking over everything. So probably just resisting AI taking over everything.
What's your go-to productivity hack?
I would say stop doing so many calls. Yeah.
What's your what's more important for you, decentralization or UX?
I think that UX is the ultimate thing to favor. Decentralization, though, is something in the user experience. It's part of the security of the user experience. So I would say that UX is more important, but that decentralization or security is a component of good UX, right? Similar to like HTTPS when you go to a website, like you want it, trust me. Yeah.
Sure. Fair. It's the kind of UX that's hidden. No one's not even seeing that. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a real good answer, by the way.
Yeah.
Really insightful.
Yeah. Now, for fun, if Fuel were a car, what car would it be?
So right now, I would say that we're like a really good, we're like, I don't know if it exists, but probably like some kind of 6-cylinder minivan that's like really useful, but it's not very sexy yet. And I think that we want to turn the minivan into some kind of supercar that's also a minivan. Yeah, I want a supercar minivan. That's there's no car that exists currently, but that would be the analogous.
Got to be like a sport car with 10 places to see.
Want to go really fast with a lot of people. So it's basically like, yeah, maybe you could describe it as some kind of like rocket or something, but I think souped up minivan would be amazing. I think that would be awesome. Yeah.
I was expecting a farming truck, man. So.
I mean, a farming truck could work. Like that could be it. But I think that like, I don't know. There's something so great about how awesome minivans are. If you could just make them super fast, that's like what we'd want. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. What about you? If you were a car, what car would you be?
Right now, I mean, I feel like I have the body of like an 85-year-old because I've been in crypto too long. So, I I'd want to say maybe like a classic car of some kind, like probably not the best 0 to 60, but like I don't know. I'd hope like some Ford Mustang or something like that. But that's in my mind. I'm probably more like a Toyota Corolla at this point, like still going, but probably seen better days. Yeah.
What about you, Felipe? What car would you be?
You know that I lack knowledge about car in a level that is like basically embarrassing. So it's like I have a hard time saying like 5 car brands.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, me too. Not gonna lie.
I'm not a car person either. I mean, I like the look of some classic cars, but then I sit in them and they're like super uncomfortable, and I'm just like, I'd much rather take like a town and country, like really comfortable new minivan over like a lot of these cars. I've sat in a lot of cars and I'm just like, man, some American minivans are just like, it's like palatial in there, and I've even heard some of the Chinese cars are really good. Like the interiors, like the whole experience inside is like super good. So I'd even like opt for something like that. It's just there's not a lot of power apparently to the car. They're like 2-cylinder or 4-cylinder or something.
I love that you're minivan pilling this podcast.
Oh, you gotta go minivan. It's so useful. I mean, all this other stuff with like smaller cars and everything, I'm so sick of it in Europe. I just like, get me a van I can get in and out of, that I can haul stuff with. You can haul your family in it. You can get around. Like, you don't need this other car, Like, you can rent a fun car. Like, go and rent a fun car, but don't own one. Like, why would you own one? It's stupid.
Good luck parking in Lisbon.
That's what I mean. That's the whole problem. You can't park anywhere here, and that's why they don't exist. And there's all these little tiny cars. But yeah, it's like, you kind of need. Actually, on the flip side, the one thing I do love about Lisbon and the cars here is the tuk-tuks. If I could own a tuk-tuk, I've tried to see if I could buy one. That would be my car for Lisbon. Like, you can park it anywhere, very space efficient, probably very charge efficient, and they're super powerful. And like, that would totally be the car. If I could get my hands on one, I would. Yeah.
You can rent them, so you probably can buy them as well.
Yeah, I'm sure you can. I didn't really see too much on the market, but I feel like, or those like little tiny Dutch cars too. Like, I'd either go super small and efficient, or I'd go minivan. But I'm not going to do anything in between. Yeah.
That's the mindset.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever you do it in the best way possible.
You just go to the maximal extreme. Like, but imagine showing up to like a party or like whatever, like, showing up in a tuk-tuk. Like, that's the greatest you can do, So yeah. Most
right.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. So just to wrap up, want to get your final thoughts. If you had one advice to give to builders, what would it be?
Probably hurry up, because you don't have a lot of time left, because AI is getting particularly good right now. So yeah, you probably want to figure out what you're going to do there. And
verifiable AI too.
Yeah, and verifiable AI too. It just feels like it's getting too good. Yeah. Oh, I think we lost.
I think AI has kicked Ron out.
AI has cut. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. I don't know how to end this, by the way. I'm a very non-participant co-host.
We'll
so
see.
We might have to like talk here until eternity.
We'll see if Schwab comes back, but maybe the AI got him. So
that's it.
It's very possible.
Yeah. Very non-uplifting way to end the podcast. AI is gonna take a while, and then Ron just disappears.
Yeah, as well. You.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah.
My Alexa.
I was gonna come back and be like, AI is actually fine. It's great. There's nothing wrong with it. We should end the podcast. Yeah.
All right, that's perfect, guys. Thank you so much for participating. This was a really fun podcast to record. Hope to get to see you all soon. And that's it. Keep building and pioneering the world of Web3.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.